an organization usually has a pretty good idea of what direction they're headed, before they start to answer this. But it's primarily going to be related to 2 points: cost and a company's IT staffing and support model. So some companies with little IT infrastructure might opt for cloud hosted. Others with perhaps regulatory requirements or existing on-premise infrastructure might opt for that path instead. So each situation is unique.
Which deployment options that a prospect or customer considers. For example, you may be only looking at solutions that run on a public or multi-tenant cloud. That then constrains, in fact, the solutions that you have available to go looking for in the market. Alternatively, a customer goes and looks at what solution is best fit functionality and capability wise, and then actually looks at what deployment options are available. And it's not unusual for at the start of a sales engagement, for example, for a prospect to have one vision of where the application is going to be running, and at contract signing or implementation that has actually changed, and or you get a hybrid. They may have development in the cloud, test production on-prem, or the other way around. I think Jonathan touched on a few very good points there. We have many customers who in fact pick different deployment options for exactly the same application. Really, whatever is selected in my mind has to meet two criteria. The first one, it's got to be fit for purpose for the price that the customer is paying for it, and there has to be minimal risk to the ongoing operation of the business from there. And again, there are many considerations. So a company that is growing fast and expanding, rapidly expanding companies are nearly always resource or skill constrained. So in reality, putting something up in a private or public cloud that they don't have to manage makes logical sense for them. However, that has another impact from there. The complexity of responsibility for the solution and managed services for that application. If you've got a service provider who is supplying you with your cloud environment, you may have another company keeping those servers up and running, and then you've got keeping the application up and running. You actually have multiple groups who could be pointing the finger. So again, that's something that people, need to consider from there. But it also touches on the employees that a company has. What's the stability of the workforce? Is it there's a rapid turnover? Is it that you have a number of people that are actually approaching retirement? That itself can have an impact on why or which deployment option you take. How long people have been around, what skill sets they have, the ability to adapt from there. One of my pet topics as well, when you look at all those options, data privacy, IP concerns, and legal constraints as well. I mean, every day at the moment we hear about data breaches on information from different companies' systems, but also the export controls. I touched on this earlier. Is the data that you have, can it actually go outside your national borders, for example? So whether that means it's an on-premise or a private cloud, but that private cloud has to be hosted on an in-country data server, for example. So again, these things can impact the cost of a decision and the risk to an organization. If you're selling with dealers, access control to be able to access the application. Internet facing is certainly a lot easier, but you need to be able to really lock down that application to really make sure that only the people that you want, are getting into it. And the other consideration I'll throw out there is the hours of availability and topics like business continuity, disaster recovery from there. If your staff, if your IT staff are only available in business working hours, yet your application is needed outside of those hours, well, going to a cloud in some form may be a better business continuity, disaster recovery consideration for you from there. I will make one interesting observation that we do make is that when people do typically look at those cloud solutions, they normally go for a utopia solution. I want 7 by 24, high availability, full disaster recovery. And then as they actually look at it, they start to whittle back on this. Are you really going to have a dealer coming in at 1:35 on Sunday morning to go and configure your product? There's a difference between perception of need and the real need from there. So again, that's why there are many different factors from my perspective that does determine what deployment is actually best for your organization now and into the future.
A private cloud does offer more control over the environment and its security. In exchange, you're usually looking at a larger upfront investment. The thing that stays constant between both is that the company ultimately is responsible for managing that application wherever it lives.